participate, we will not continue. Georgia, you are not there. I think at that time you are not there. Awiko Dangote. In our last class, we were talking about public finance as vision in the Constitution, that is 2010. I think I was in part 2. Did I discuss the revenue fund, contingency fund? Was I able to discuss that? Yes. So we proceed to part 3, that is revenue raising power and public debt. So part 3 was revenue, on that, revenue raising powers in what we call the public and the public debt. Revenue raising power and what we call the public debt. So that is where we start from. I hope everybody is with Malimo. So when it comes to revenue raising powers, we start with the power to impose taxes and charges. We start with what we call first one, the power to impose, the power to do what? To impose what we call taxes and what we call the charges. So whenever we talk about the power to impose taxes and charges, the power to impose taxes and charges. So basically you need to understand that what are the taxes that basically is collected by the national government, but at the same time, what are the taxes that are collected by the county government altogether. So when you look at that chapter 12, are we together? That is Article 209 of the Constitution. So we basically say that Article 209, that is the Article 209, we say that the national government we say has what we call the power to impose. We say to impose, has the power to basically impose, we say the following, has the power to impose what we call the following taxes. So when you look at the chapter 12 of the Constitution, Article 209, it says that the national government basically has the power to basically impose the following taxes. One of the taxes that the national government has been given the mandate, that is what's called the income. We call it the income taxes. We have the income taxes. It is not the county, but it's the national government that imposes the income tax. We have VAT, that is the value added tax. We have VAT, which is the value added tax. We have custom duties on import and export. Custom. We have the next custom duties. We have the custom duty. I hope we are recording. We have what we call the custom duty. We have the custom duty. And then we have what's called excise duty. So excise duty. So when it comes of collection of the income taxes, value-added tax, custom duty, and excise duty, this is the mandate of what we call the national government. Together, this is the mandate of what we call the national government. I want us to exhaust our time so that by that time, I will know what to do. So that is the national government that is given the mandate to impose what we call income taxes, VAT, custom duty, and excise duty. So if you ask, for example, if you look at the county does not have the mandate to impose these taxes. Together, the county government does not have the mandate to basically impose the taxes Malimo was given below. Together. Then as an NB on that, we have what we call an NB. So when you look at the NB, we understand that the Act of Parliament basically authorized the national government to impose other taxes or duty except. So it also gives it the mandate to impose other taxes, to impose what we call the other taxes apart from the ones that are given altogether. That is the Act of the Parliament. We call it the Act of what we call the Parliament. So it gives national government to impose other taxes apart from the ones that are mentioned altogether. Impose any other taxes or duty except those altogether. Are we together? Act of Parliament altogether. Authorize national government to impose other taxes or duties together. But the same article, that is Article 209, gives the county government, we say that it gives the county government of the Constitution, gives county government, government, we say to impose, authority to say to impose what I call the following taxes. To impose what you call the following taxes. So the same article gives a mandate to the county government to impose the following taxes. So if you look at the year 2023, this question was basically asked: what are taxes that that the Constitution gives the county authority to impose? What are these taxes? What are these taxes that are being imposed by the county government? Tuchangamke tafadhali. It's very early in the morning. So then one of the taxes that the county government is given, that is the property taxes. We have the entertainment taxes. Are we together? We have the property taxes. We have entertainment taxes. Are we together? And we can say any other tax that is authorized by the Act of Government, Act of Parliament. So some of the taxes the county is given, we have what we call the property taxes. We have what's called the entertainment taxes. We have the entertainment taxes. Then we call it any other tax. Any other tax. We call it authorized. And say by the Act of the Parliament, by the Act of what's called the Parliament. Any other tax that is authorized by the Act of Parliament. So these are the taxes that the county government has been given mandate by the Constitution to basically impose. Together, George, we respond with a yes. Together. Perfect. So then, two levels of the government, that is the county, the two levels of the government, two levels of what we call government. So we can basically see that they've been given mandate to impose the taxes. But one of the things that you need to understand, though they're given the mandate basically to impose what we call the taxes, they should not, are we together? They should impose them in a manner that does not prejudice. They should not impose them in a manner that prejudice. One of the things we call it national policies. In a manner that prejudices what we call the national policy. They should not impose taxes in a manner that prejudices what we call the national policies, national economic policy, in a manner that does not prejudice national economic. We call it the economic policy. Are we together? National economic policies, economic activity across country, economic, we call it economic, we call it activities, and say across what we call the county, and what we call the national government, across the county and the national government. So as they impose it, they should not impose it in a manner that will prejudice what we call national economic policy or economic activities across the national and county government. So then I want to talk about the next concept that is on 3. On 3, that is imposition of tax. Imposition, that was A. Imposition of what I call the taxes. That is the next I want to talk about. Imposition of the taxes. Imposition of the taxes. So on the imposition of the taxes, get the explanation. So no taxes on the imposition. We basically say that no taxes or licensing fee can be imposed or waived or varied. So we're saying that no tax or license fee can be imposed, waived, or varied without what we call legislation. Are we together? So we cannot impose a tax without the law, without legislation altogether. So no tax can basically be imposed, waived, or levied without what we call the imposition of without legislation. So we cannot impose any tax without the law. Are we together? Neither can we waive a tax, meaning we remove the responsibility. But at the same time, we're saying that neither can a tax be valid without legislation. Are we together? So whenever a tax, those three things happening, imposition, we have what's called imposition, variation, or what we call waiving of those taxes. Waiving, they should be what's called the legislation. They should be what's called legislation. And the public record, can you say, and what's called public record, and what's called the public record, and at the same time what's called the public record. Are we together? And at the same time what's called the public record, together with reason for waiver. Together, we say together with what's called with the reason, we call it with the reason of what you call waiver. So you don't just waive, but whenever taxes are imposed, there should be a law behind it. Whenever a tax is varied, there should be a law behind it, and there should be what you call a public record and the reason for waiver, and the Auditor General must be notified for the waiver, and what's called and the Auditor General must be notified. We say must be notified. We say of what we call of the waiver, and the Auditor General must be notified of what we call the waiver, and the Auditor General, we say, must be notified of the waiver. Together, team. That is when it comes to imposition, when it comes to waiver, and variation of the taxes altogether. But also very important on that particular concept of the waiver, the imposition of tax altogether. So no law exclude any state officer from payment of tax. So there's no law in place that exclude what we call the public officer, we say from the payment of what we call of taxes by the virtue of one office held, or the nature of the law, of the nature of the work, of what we call the work. So then C on that number 3. C or number 3. We'll talk about borrowing by the national government. We talk about borrowing, very interesting concept. Borrowing, we say by the national government. So we talk about borrowing by the national government. How should it go? How should national government basically borrow? Do you know how borrowing should go in terms of the national government? Tim, how should borrowing go in terms of the national government? How should borrowing go? That good student who is always abreast with issues pertaining to the nation. Do you think the national government can just basically wake up and borrow without procedures? Can the national government basically arise and borrow without procedures? That is my question. Can the national government just rise and borrow without procedures? So number 1, we have the parliament. The parliament basically prescribe terms, we say, in which times in which the national government comes up with the terms in which national government can borrow. National government can borrow. Have it at the back of your mind that it is the parliament that basically prescribe terms on which the national government can borrow. Together, Blessy and Jojo. So it is the national government, it is the parliament that basically comes up with the terms in which the national government can borrow. Are we together? And impose what we call operating requirement. And impose what we call, and say impose what we call operating requirements. So we're dealing with topic 1 and 2. That is what I've started with. So whenever there's borrowing, if there's no terms of borrowing, what will happen? What is the implication when you borrow without structure? When there's borrowing without structure. When there's borrowing, but there's no structure. Blessing. What happens when there's borrowing and we have borrowing and there's no structures for borrowing? What happens? There's misuse of fund. Perfect. That's what I did. There's definitely misuse of fund altogether. So under this, that's why we have controls. One of the controls is that the parliament altogether needs to prescribe terms in which national government can borrow and impose what we call operating requirement. In that line, you need to understand that the CS of finance, together when it comes to borrowing, the CS of finance, you need to understand that the CS responsible for finance together must report together in line with the first statement. The CS for finance must basically report to the House of Parliament within 7 days of the request to borrow. That request must have what we call the full details of what we call loans or guarantee together. So we basically say that CS of finance, CS of what we call finance, in this line must report to what we call to the parliament, must report to the parliament, and say within 7 days, must report to the parliament. If you're saying reporting to the parliament within 7 days, must report to the parliament within 7 days of request and full of request and what's called details of what called the loans. So very interesting. Borrowing by county government. Borrowing by what's called the county government. What we call the borrowing by county government. We have what's called borrowing by the county government. We are on borrowing by what's called the county government. So proceed on borrowing with the county government together. So realize that the county government, they can only borrow together if the loan is guaranteed by the national government together team. But they can basically borrow, look up, they can basically borrow if the loan we say is guaranteed by national government and approved by the county assembly. So the only way that the county can borrow, we say that the county can borrow, the county can only borrow if we say the loan is guaranteed by what we call the national government and approved by what's called by the county Assembly. By the County Assembly. By the County Assembly. By the County Assembly. Together. So county loans are basically guaranteed by the national government. And that's why you say the county government can only borrow if the loan is guaranteed by the national government. But at the same time, we say that if the loan is guaranteed by the national government, but it also has to have the approval of the county assembly. It also has to have approval of what we call the National Assembly. Together, in terms of borrowing by the county government. Tafadhali nipatie yes if you're there. Then I want to talk about the idea of guarantee. Guarantee. I want to talk about on the aspect of guarantee. I want to talk on guarantee. And I want also to encourage the team. This journey called life, it's full of challenges. And the journey education, you'll always find there will always be a lot of challenges. But you have to push. You have to make sacrifices. You know, sometimes the body feels like not moving, but then you have to be courageous and tell the body that you have a goal that is ahead of you. So I want to talk about loans guaranteed by the national government. So we talk about loans guaranteed by what's called by the national government. So we talk about loans that are guaranteed by the national government. Loans that we say are guaranteed, we say guaranteed by the national government. Together, loans that are guaranteed, we're saying that the loans that are basically guaranteed by the national government are together. So you need to understand that parliaments, are we together? Parliaments will basically determine the terms on which national government should guarantee the loans of the country, of the county government together. Guarantee, national determine the terms in which the national government should guarantee and approved by the county, are we together? Should determine the terms under which national government may guarantee loan, are we together? They should come up with the terms on which the national government should guarantee these loans for the county, are we together? But look at the end of the financial year. And at the end of the financial year, are we together? National government must basically prepare a report. Are we together? Guarantees provided in that financial year. So we have the parliament. On this, we have the parliament. Where standard comes up with what we call the terms. The terms. We say that the national government, we say should guarantee what we call the laws. So they basically come up with terms in which the national government should basically guarantee the loans altogether. So, but by the end of the financial year, we say by the end of the financial year, by the end of the financial year, there's something that needs to be done. By the end of the financial year, provide a report. National government should provide. National government should provide what we call report. Should provide what we call report on what we call on the guarantees. Provide what's called report on the guarantees. So by the end of the financial year, the national government should basically provide reports on what's called on the guarantees. Together, give me yes. So then we have the next thing, that is the public debt. We have what's called the public debt. We have what's called the public debt. Next, we have what they call the public debt. So what is public debt? When Modibo says public debt, what do you basically mean by public debt? When you say public debt, so in terms of on the last topic, that is public debt management, one of the sources of revenue for the government we say is borrowing. So whenever we talk about debt, these are borrowings. Debt is what's called borrowing. So what we call charges. Debt is basically borrowings to what we call charges on consolidated fund, or charges on what's called on the consolidated. So what we call this charges or not called the consolidated fund. That is what's called the public debt. That is what's called the public debt. Together. Are we together on that? So we were on revenue raising power and public debt. So we go to part 4 on the Constitution. So part 4, we talk about revenue allocation. What we call revenue allocation. Say to what's called revenue allocation. Revenue allocation. How do we allocate revenue for the national government? How do we allocate revenue for the national government? How does revenue, who allocates the revenue? Revenue allocation. So when it comes to revenue allocation, we are basically introduced to what we call the CRA. We are basically introduced to what we call the CRA. So what is CRA? CRA is Commission on Revenue Allocation. Call it Commission on what's called on revenue allocation. So when it comes to allocation of revenue, we're basically introduced to the CRA. CRA basically stands with what's called the Commission on Revenue Allocation. Together, team. So when you look at this on chapter 12, we have what I call, you don't need to master this, article 215. This is on revenue allocation. We basically have article 215 that is that basically constitutes what's called of the Constitution. Are we together? This is what establishes, this article establishes what's called the CRA. Awiko Jojo Meshach, I'll say CRA basically stands for what you call Commission on Revenue Allocation. It is established by Article 215, and you say of the Constitution. So the first thing when I talk about the CRA, I talk about the composition of the CRA. Composition of what we call of the CRA. That is the Commission on Revenue Allocation. What makes up the composition of the CRA? That is Commission of Revenue Allocation. So at the end of the CRA, Tim, at the end of the CRA, are we together? At the end of the CRA, we have what's called the chairperson. Are we together? Who makes the appointment for the chairperson at the end of it? These appointments are made by who? By the president altogether. These appointment notes are basically made by, and some other appointments, we say are made by the person that by the president. Appointments are basically made by the president. So when it comes to appointment of the composition, this is done by the president. So at the end, we have what we call chairperson. We have a person that we call chairperson, and this chairperson must be approved. We call it approved by the parliament. The chairperson must be approved by the parliament. So the chairperson must basically be approved by the president. So on CRA, the head of, so we have 2 members nominated by the political parties. 2 members, we say 2 members, and we call it nominated. By what's called by the political parties. 2 members that are nominated by political parties, 2 members that we say are nominated by political parties, 2 members that are nominated by political parties in National Assembly. In National Assembly. So we have 2 members that are nominated by political parties in the National Assembly. And when it comes to this nomination nominated by political parties in the National Assembly, we know that in proportion of their membership altogether. Then we have 5 members. We also have the next 5 members. We have 5 members. We call it nominated by what we call by political parties. By political parties. 5 members nominated by political parties. We say represented. Represented in what we call in the Senate. So we have 5 members nominated by nominated by what's called political parties. Political parties. Political parties. Political parties represented in the Senate. Presented in the Senate according to proportion of members. According, we say according to what we call to proportion. The proportion, we say, of members. According to the proportion of what we call the members. So at the end, we have what we call the chairperson. There has to be approval from the parliament. We have 2 members nominated by political parties. By political parties, are we together? And this is in National Assembly. This is National Assembly. National Assembly. In the National Assembly. And we talk about this is also based on membership. This is also based by membership. In the last composition of the CRA, there is a Commission on Revenue Allocation, Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. We call it Principal Secretary. Secretary in what we call in the Ministry of what we call Finance. So Principal Secretary, and we say in the Ministry of Finance. So this is what makes up what we call the CRA, that is Commission on Revenue Allocation. Yes. And while Natalie was over there, we say that there will never be a good time to learn. Are we together? There will never be a good time to always do things. But a good time is always now. Are we together? A good time to succeed is always now. So there will never be a perfect time to succeed. But the perfect time to succeed is now. So you have to give it effort. What I tell people, it's not about people, it's about you. Yes. So at the end of the day, when it comes to joining classes, doing your best, it all lies with you. So functions of the CRA, Commission on Revenue Allocation. Functions, we talk about functions of what we call of the CRA. That is Commission on Revenue Allocation. Do we know that there is a CRA? Is there any person who doesn't know that there is a commission that we have, the CRA, which is Commission on Revenue Allocation? I hope in class we are aware of this. We have the Commission on Revenue Allocation. All of us. Natalie, I hope you are aware. I hope you are aware. We are talking about revenue allocation. And predominantly, when we talk about revenue allocation, it is mandated. The commission that is mandated is the CRA. So we talk about functions of the CRA. So before we jot them down, I would want us just to discuss how it together. So one of the functions is basically recommend. The CRA basically recommends the equitable share of national government, of revenue between national government and county government. It basically recommends equitable share of national revenue between the national government and the county government. So instead of saying the national government, you just say 2 levels of government. Look up when you talk about allocation. We say that less than 84.5% will go to less than 84.5% will go to the national government. And you say that greater than 15%, 15 or greater than 15% will go to the county government when it comes to allocation. Then you say that the 0.5% of the revenue goes to what? 0.5% of the revenue will go to? We have the national government, we had the county, will go to the equalization fund. So one of the first mandates of the CRA is to basically recommend what's called the equitable share of the national revenue between the county and the national government, or just say two levels of government altogether. The second function of the CRA, we say that recommend what's called equitable share of revenue raised by national government among the county. So now sharing that 15%, how does the counties basically share that equitably? Are we together? And I remember when I was talking about this class, I told you that there's this parameter. When it comes to this 15%, we say that greater than 15% that basically goes to the county. There's basically a parameter that is being used to share this revenue together. Most of the time, which counties do you think have the most revenue and why? Where does most of the share of the county go to? Which counties basically takes the huge share? Which of the counties? Nairobi. And one of the parameters that gives it altogether is the population, is because of the population altogether. Population takes a huge chunk, not the surface area, because in terms of surface areas, there are areas that are so big, but in terms of population, the parameter population basically gives the counties that have a lot of money, that are being allocated a lot of money, is based on what's called the parameter together. So the second I've talked about equitable share, what's called the equitable share of revenue raised by national government among the county. But at the same time, number three, we talk about recommend on matters concerning financing. They also recommend on matters concerning how to finance counties and the national government. They basically recommend on matters concerning how do we finance the national government and how do we finance the county altogether. So then the next, as the CRA also define what's called define and enhance revenue sources of national government. Define and enhance sources of revenue for national and county government. Together, team. Can I put them down? Is that understood? If that is understood, unipatie is. Perfect. So say equitable sharing of revenue, equitable sharing of what you call of revenue, and say between two levels of what you call of the government. So that is the first one, equitable sharing of revenue between two levels of government. We say of saying national and county. So we say equitable sharing of what you call of revenue. We say raised by what you call the national government, and say among what you call the county, among the county government. So we have what's called equitable sharing of revenue raised, we say among the county government. Then is recommend matters concerning, recommend matters concerning what you call financing, recommend on matters concerning what's called financing of national and county government, financing of what you call national and what's called the county government. Recommend on matters that basically concern financing of both national and what's called the county government together. Then you can also talk about define and enhance revenue sources of national government. Define and say enhances sources, what you call the sources of revenue of what you call of national government. So we say define and enhance sources of revenue for the national and county government. So it defines and enhances sources of revenue. Then you have what we call fiscal responsibility. encourage fiscal responsibility for both county and national government. Encourage what's called fiscal responsibility. We call it for both what you call the county and what's called the national government. For both county and what's called the national government. So encourages what's called fiscal responsibility, that is for both county and what's called the national government. Are we together? We respond with a yes. Together. But at the same time, are we together? We can also consult. Remember, they're in charge of revenue allocation. So if there's any bill that the parliament needs to pass concerning sharing of revenue, they're basically doing what? They can be consulted on revenue sharing. So we can say consulted on revenue sharing bill. Consulted, we can talk about consulted on what's called on the revenue, on the revenue sharing bill. So they will be consulted on the revenue sharing bill. I hope that is at home. Revenue sharing bill. I hope that is at home. Together. Perfect. And just as we say, nothing will ever come easy. Consulted on revenue sharing bill. Consulted on what's called the revenue sharing bill. So I proceed to what's called the division of revenue. Division of revenue. I proceed to division of what I call of revenue. Division of what I call of revenue. So division of revenue. So when you hear the word division, Tim, when you hear the word division, we say division is essentially what we call sharing of revenue between two levels of government together. Are we together? Sharing of revenue between two levels of government. So in say division, there's what we call allocation of revenue. There's what we call allocation of what we call of revenue. We can have division of revenue bill, allocation of revenue bill. We talk about these two concepts. So when you talk about division of revenue bill, this basically touches on sharing of revenue between two levels of what we call of the government. Two levels of what we call the government. So this basically touches on what we call the sharing of revenue on the two levels of the government. It basically touches on sharing revenue on the two levels of government together. Are we together? So allocation of revenue bills, this will touch on amongst the county. We call it amongst what we call the county government. This will touch amongst the county government. This will basically touch on amongst the county government. But now we'll talk about 100% revenue. When there's 100% revenue, how does this sharing go? When you talk about 100% of the revenue. So we have the national government, we have B, and then we have C. This is the national. This is the national government. This is what's called the county government. And this is what's called equalization. Called equalization fund. We call it the equalization fund. So then we're saying that this is 84%. So you can get 84% or less altogether. 84.5 altogether. This can be 15% or more. Are we together? You can have it as 15% or more. Then equalization fund, we know that is 0.5%. That is 0.5% together. So this is amongst the county government. This should go amongst what we call the county, amongst the county government. This should go amongst the county government. That should basically go amongst the county government. Amongst the county government. Are we together? And based on formula approved by Parliament. Based on formula approved by Parliament. Approved by what you call by Parliament. So we look at that formula. And call it approved. You say it by the government. We talk about formula approved by the government. Formula approved by the Parliament. So formula that is approved by the Parliament. Just a minute as I get some ink. Formula approved by the Parliament. A minute, we get some ink. So look up when you started, I talked about factors that are considered when sharing revenue between the county and the national government. We talked about the national needs of the national government, needs of the county government, national interest, public debt, fiscal policy. So when you talk about the county, we have what you call, amongst the county, we have what you call criteria. And those are two different concepts. So when you talk about the counties, they is basically what you call criteria that are used. So what is those criteria? You've had when people say 1 shilling, 1 man for 1 shilling, are we together? So one of the criteria, we have what's called the population. We have population as one of the sharing population. We have what's called the land area. We have population, we have the land area. We have what's called the fiscal responsibility. We call it responsibility. Fiscal responsibility. We have what's called the fiscal responsibility. We have what's called fiscal responsibility. We have poverty. We have poverty. And then we have basic equal share. Basic equal share. So there's what we call basic equal share. So these are the parameters. In fact, a question that came in 2022 asked about parameter used to share revenue. Parameters of sharing what we call revenue amongst the counties. Revenue, and we call it amongst the county government. So parameters of basically sharing revenue, and you say amongst the county government. So one of the first parameters is the population. So we need to understand that population takes 45%, 45%. That gives to 0.45. Are we together? Population will take about 45%. 45%. Population will take 45%. Then the basic equal share, we say it takes 25%. That should be about 0.25. 0.25. Then we have what's called the land area. So land area will take about 8%. That should be 0.08%. That should be about 0.08. Then we have what's called the fiscal responsibility. So fiscal responsibility will take about 2%. That should be 0.02, 2%, 0.02. Then you have the poverty level. So poverty should take about 20%. Poverty should take about 20%. That should be 0.2. So when you add that, does it total to 100%? Add for me that. Does it total to 100%? So this is 45 is 100%. This is 1. So this is how, if you look at the counties and how those revenue have been shared, they have been shared on these parameters. Tafadhali. And I've said, I also repeat, and I say that if you look at this particular question is there in 2022, 2022 or 2023. The year 2022 and the year 2023. Asking one parameter that I used together. But if you look at how revenue is being shared between Abdi Nasir, fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility. So whenever we talk about fiscal responsibility, it touches on two aspects. That is government revenue and taxes altogether. Revenue and expenditure altogether. Revenue and expenditure. So when you talk about fiscal responsibility, we touch on two aspects. We're talking on revenue and expenditure. So whenever we talk about fiscal responsibility, fiscal basically touches on two: responsibility on revenue and expenditure of those counties. Sawa Abdi Nasir Aji. When you talk about fiscal responsibility, thank you so much. So I talked about this bill, Division of Revenue Bill. The answer, this came even in 2024. What is Division of Revenue Bill? Sharing of revenue between two levels of government, that is county and national revenue altogether. So that is Division of Revenue Bill, division. Then allocation of revenue bill, that is sharing of revenue amongst the county altogether. That is amongst the county. So when you talk about Division of Revenue Bill, if it comes in exam, this is sharing of revenue between two levels of government. When you talk about allocation of revenue bill, or what you call the county allocation revenue bill, that is sharing of revenue amongst the county. Together, team, we respond with a yes. So then I proceed to part 5. So on part 5, I talk about what you call budget and spending. Budget and spending. Budget and what you call spending. I touch on what you call the budget and what you call spending. We touch on what you call the budgets, and what you call spending and spending. What you call the budget and spending. Budget and spending. Budget and what you call spending. Budget and spending. Budget and spending. Budget and spending. So you talk about forms. So we have timing, form timing, forms timing, content and timing and content of what we call of the budgets. So we have the forms, we have the timing, we have timing. Are we together? Timing of the budget. So I want to talk about budgets of national and county government. Budgets of what we call national, of the national, and what we call the county government. So we have what's called the budgets of the national and county government. we say must contain what we call the following. Must contain what you have as the following. So if you look at those budgets for both county government and the national government, they basically contain a number of things if you look at those budgets. So composition of the budget, what does the budget contain? So in those budgets, if either you're looking at the county government budget or the national government budget, you'll see a number of things in those budgets. One of it is estimates of revenue and expenditure. One of the things is estimate. We call it estimates of what we call of revenue and what we call the expenditure. Estimate of what we call the revenue and expenditure. Estimates of what we call the revenue and expenditure as the first thing that is there. Are we together? So on that revenue, we are basically going to differentiate the current expenditure, the current and development expenditure. So we understand that development expenditure, these are capital expenditure. Recurrent, these are day-to-day expenditure. Then on those budget proposal, there'll also be a proposal for deficit financing. What do you call proposal? We call it the proposal of what we call of deficit financing. Proposal for what we call deficit finance. How are we going to finance a deficit? So we basically call it proposal for deficit financing. Are we together? Then we have lastly proposal for borrowing and increase in public debt. Proposal for borrowing, we call it for borrowing, and what's called public proposal for borrowing and increase in public debt. And increase, what we call increase in what's called in public debt. Proposal for borrowing and what's called increase in public debt together. So on those budgets, these are some things that you'll find. Together, team, on a budget, if you're looking at the budget of the county and the budget of the national government, you'll see those things. Nipatie yes further. Maingi, I hope you're okay. Maingi, I hope everything is okay. Blessy, I hope everything is okay. Kama tuko sawa, pia tuseme yes. Thank you. And thank you for showing up. Structures, we say national government prescribed. What does national government does in terms of budget and spending? So we say that the national government, we say prescribe. So the national government basically prescribe the following. The national government would basically prescribe what we call the following. So the national government, we understand, should basically prescribe the following. Are we together? We say timing of the budget, structure of development plan, prescribe structure of what we call of development plan, structure of the development plan, timing of the budget, of what we call of the budget, timing of the budget. It does prescribe timing of the budget, and they say forms of consultation, forms of what we call of consultation, forms of what we call consultation between governments, between government in the process of preparing the budget, between government in what's called in the process of what we call of preparing a budget. What we call forms of consultation between government and say in the process of preparing a budget. So what we call forms of consultation between government in the process of preparing what we call a budget. In the process of preparing a budget. In the process of preparing what we call a budget. In the process of preparing a budget. In the process of preparing what we call a budget. Then you talk about the second thing, I want to talk about budget. I want to talk about budget estimates and annual appropriation bill. So what is an appropriation bill? What is a budget estimate? So budget estimates, budget estimate, and what's called an annual, call it appropriation, and annual appropriation bill. So we have what's called the budget estimate, and what we call the annual appropriation bill. What we call the budget estimate and annual appropriation bill. So before this budget are read, what you see when you see the Minister of Finance reading the budget, and when is the budget being read? When you see the minister basically reading the budget, when are these budgets basically prepared? What is the process? Because that's one of the areas that we're going to discuss. And it came in, not this exam, but in April, budget making process. But we're also going to talk about the budget making process. How does the budget making process basically go? And per se, I want to talk about two things: budget estimates and appropriation, annual appropriation bill. There's a question on appropriation bill. What is an appropriation bill? And I'm asking, how does the budget process basically go? So understand that 2 months before, look up, 2 months before what we call the end of what we call the financial year. Look up, 2 months before the end of the financial year. What is 2 months before the end of the financial year? What would that be? When does our financial year basically end? 30th June? 30th June. So that should be around April altogether. So 2 months before the financial year, we know that the CS of finance, CS of what we call finance, presents what we call the estimates, presents what we call the estimates, or submit, presents to what we call submits, presents, or we say submit, present, or we say submit to Parliament. What we call submit Parliament, estimates, or what we call of revenue, and what's called expenditure, 2 months, that is in April. So when you talk about budget estimates, and there's a question, some of the documentation, budget estimate, that is done 2 months, we say 2 months, that should be 30th of April. To be precise, that should be 30th of April. Together team, that should be 30th of April. To be very precise, that should basically be 30th of April when these estimates are presented to the Parliament altogether, to the Parliament of the national government altogether, of the national government, present estimates of revenue to the Parliament, and you say for the next financial year, So our next financial year comes in, starts in July. It will start on July next year. So when will they present this estimate for our next financial year? We already have a financial year that is running. That was on 1st July, running all the way to June next year together. So before June next year, before you start on July, there will be estimates of revenue presented to the Parliament. That is on 30th April of 2026. And which financial year will that be? That will be 2026-2027 financial year. What will happen? 2 months before the end of the financial year, the CS of Finance will basically present what's called revenue, estimates of revenue and expenditure to the parliament. Are we together? Are we together? So why do they present? Why do they basically present this to the parliament? Why do they present this to the parliament? Why is this presented to the parliament? Why is this basically presented to the parliament? Why is this presented to the parliament? Why do they think it is presented to the parliament? For the purpose of approval of it together. Remember, parliament offers over what you call oversight together. They check into this. There's what you call the budget committee. Have you ever heard of, when you're doing topic 3, when you look at topic 3, we have what you call oversight. We have what you call oversight. Are we together? So one of the oversights in the parliament is what you call now budget we have what you call the National Budget Committee. So this budget committee team will look at into the budget and report to the parliament. So we are going to look at this. It is the budget committee. On this budget committee, there are professionals, those MPs that are in the budget, they are allocated teams who will do research and look at this. They scrutinize that budget. And after scrutinizing that budget, they go back to the whole parliament and present that parliament for, they tell them, we have looked at it, this and this and this and this, this and this, and therefore that's where the approval comes. Then I come to the next concept. Look at this concept. We call it the annual appropriation. We call it an annual appropriation bill. We call it the annual appropriation bill. We call it the annual appropriation bill. So whenever I talk about appropriation bill, what is an appropriation bill? So on this estimate, are we together? After consideration of the estimates, team, after consideration of the estimates, so we basically say the estimates are included in the appropriation bill. Estimates are basically included in what's called the appropriation bill. What does the appropriation bill basically does? What does the appropriation bill basically does? What does the appropriation bill basically do? That is the big question. Are we together? This bill, we say, authorize what we call expenditure. Authorized expenditure. It does what? Authorizes expenditure from what you call from the consolidated, authorized expenditures from the consolidated fund. So this appropriation bill, so what this does is that it does authorize expenditure from what you call from the consolidated fund. So what is the role of appropriation bill? It basically authorizes expenditure from what you call from the consolidated fund. Together, that is the appropriation bill. Nipatie, yes. Asante. So if you look at, or if you ask what is the appropriation bill, it does authorize expenditure from what you call from the consolidated fund. No wonder, if you're not informed, you will not know what happens. So, if appropriation bill has been passed, see that authorized expenditure, you wonder how would the government basically run if a bill has not passed? Are we together? If appropriation bill has been passed, it does authorize what you call expenditure. So we talk about spending before annual budget is passed. How do you go about spending before the annual budget is passed? Before the annual budget is passed. How do you go about spending before what you call the annual budget is passed? How do we go about spending before the annual budget is passed? Are we together? How do we go about that? So, number one, if the appropriation bill is delayed, if what you call the appropriation, we call it bill, we say is delayed. If what you call the appropriation bill is basically delayed, if the appropriation bill is delayed, are we together? What is happening? If the appropriation bill is delayed, this is the last thing I'm covering. I don't want to exceed time. We agreed on 1 hour 30 minutes, and I will honor it. I will not extend. Sawa. So this is the last thing I'm discussing. Is that noted? I hope that is noted. But again, also we were bringing people back to life. Yes, we were bringing people back to life. We had missed the Saturday class. So I want us to be back, because today in the evening, there's some videos I was to send. I see just how I'm sending those videos, because I want to introduce VAT. I'll send one more questions on company, another one that has been done on company, you look at. Then I'll start on VAT, which is the last calculation today. So then if appropriation bill is delayed, meaning that expenditure is not authorized altogether. So we need to understand that National Assembly nevertheless will authorize, will do what? Authorize what called withdrawal, will nevertheless authorize what called withdrawal, will nevertheless authorize withdrawal of money, of what you call money, and say from what you call from the consolidated fund, will nevertheless authorize withdrawal from the consolidated fund. Are we together? Will nevertheless authorize withdrawal from the consolidated fund to carry out services of the national government, to carry out what you call services of what you call of the national government. But this is the contradiction. Nevertheless, will authorize, and nevertheless, we say that National Assembly, we have the National Assembly will authorize withdrawal of money from the consolidated fund to carry out services of the national government. We say that it is the appropriation bill that authorizes expenditure. If the appropriation bill is basically delayed, what happens? So we're saying the national government nevertheless will authorize withdrawal of the money from the consolidated fund. Are we together? But look at the catch. The catch is that, are we together? Until the delay will authorize withdrawal of money from the consolidated funds to carry on services until the delay is solved. Are we together? Until the delay is solved. Until we say the delay is solved. This basically comes as a provision to sort out the issues. Because if money does not move, do you think the government will run? The government will not run. Are we together? But the catch is, this money should not exceed. The catch is should not. We say should not exceed. The catch is should not exceed what we call 50%. Should basically not exceed 50% of the national expenditure of the year, of what we call of the national expenditure. We say for the year should not exceed 50%. So the catch is that money should not exceed 50% of the national expenditure for the year. Are we together? Until 50% of the national expenditure for the year. And that marks the end of our class. Looking forward for evening. I just want to say God bless you. And for those who came late, poleni tulianza mapema, but I'm hoping next time we'll join much earlier. So I'd like to close there. Unless somebody has something that is burning, something that cannot be postponed, you're allowed to say and let Mwalimu know. What is that cannot be delayed? I've shared the notes. These notes were shared. Is it true? Awiko, were the notes shared? One thing that I always try is to share the notes prior. Awiko, can you confirm the notes were shared? Yes. So we close it there. Somebody says, yes, we changed it. It was changed. Yes, it said 6:30, but we changed. Some people are going to work. Like, because there was a confusion. Some people, Paul, I think there was a change. Some people say they were leaving earlier.